Alfred Free Time.
Shaftesbury area patients of the Abbeyview Medical Centre are invited to Rivers Meet in Gillingham for the Men's Health Day tomorrow from midday until 7 p.m.
We're making clear that it's not just for men. It's for the women in men's lives or their partners, because often they're the ones who would say, actually, I should go and have that looked at, and so on.
There's a Macmillan coffee morning tomorrow at Motcombe Methodist Church with homemade cakes on sale from 10 until 12 noon. 5 inflatables will entertain the kids, and there's a bar for adults, including Prosecco and Pimm's, at Abbey Primary School tomorrow, 5:30 until 9 p.m. See the film Tar at Shaftesbury Arts Centre, 8 o'clock tomorrow, being screened with the film club. And there's a chance to test your general knowledge. Paul Merrifield's hosting a quiz for the Shaftesbury Twinning Association tomorrow, Friday at 7 o'clock at the Royal British Legion Hall. It's £8, including a light buffet. The kids may enjoy crafting at Shaftesbury Library on Saturday morning to celebrate Roald Dahl Day. And they'll be shown how to make their own giraffe from the Giraffe and the Pelly and Me in the free session from 11 till 12. There's an indoor and outdoor craft market with plenty of gifts on sale, food and live music, arranged by Alison Harding at Shaftesbury Town Hall, a fundraiser for Weldmar Hospice Care and the Dorset and Somerset Air Ambulance, 9 till 5 this Saturday. Published nature writer Jeanette Adams has an inspiring writing workshop to encourage you how to write about wildlife and what you see outdoors. It's happening at the Friends Meeting House on Saturday morning from 10 o'clock. And you can book by going to the Shaftesbury Book Festival Reading the Land website. Just Google Reading the Land and you'll find details about the event called Writing the Land.
We'll go out as a group and be able to sort of, point out different things to people and try and spark some inspiration as to what they might want to write about.
Shaftesbury Arts Centre is hosting a huge sale of costumes from their drama productions and DVDs from their film club during the day on Saturday.
Things have been got rid of as time's gone on. There are some things that date back years and years.
The event is on from 10 till 4. Sadly, Hummingbird's gig at the Abbey on Saturday afternoon has been cancelled. There's a service of remembrance recalling the Battle of Britain on Park Walk on Sunday starting at 11 o'clock.
Alfred Free Time. Email hello@thisisalfred.com. From the high point of Dorset, this is Alfred.
Last night, on Wednesday night, dozens of locals and visiting artists filled the Arts Centre Gallery on Bell Street. It was 10 years ago, in September 2013, when volunteers at the Arts Centre decided to transform what had temporarily been a charity shop into an exhibition area for all forms of art, a place where established and new artists, both local and visiting, could show and sell their pieces. It's been a success and a major contributor to the Arts Centre, a registered charity. The event celebrated the role that Kate Pickard and Caroline Hughes have played in developing the facility. They've now handed over the reins to a new group of volunteers. Percy Lazard spoke on behalf of the new management team of the Arts Centre Gallery.
It's pretty unique. I was chatting to the chap in charge of the Bridport Gallery, and he would love to have what we've got, but they just simply haven't got the personnel. They certainly wouldn't have the volunteers. And so they'd look at this as a jewel in the crown. I was recently speaking to the editor of Dorset Life, who said Shaftesbury is quickly catching up with Bridport as being a centre a centre of excellence in the arts that's unrivalled.
Percy says for many locals, visiting the gallery's exhibitions has become a ritual.
And I'm amazed how many people make a point of coming to every single exhibition to have a look at the talent of all the people who exhibit here. And I think that's terrific. But what is amazing about it is the commitment of Kate Pickard, ably supported by Caroline Hughes. We're running it now as a team of 4, Joe, Andrea, Karen and myself. And that's 4 of us doing what Kate did with the help of Caroline. And I wonder how they managed to do it, because it is quite a commitment keeping it going day in, day out.
Kate Pickard will never forget the opening night.
And the weather was absolutely atrocious. It was, I walk from home to here and I had to put my wellies on. It didn't... Very Shaftesbury. Yes, very Shaftesbury. Wasn't a good look. Oh yeah, it was so wet that the plan had been to shift everybody out over there, put a ribbon across the door and cut it. We couldn't. We hadn't got enough umbrellas. So we put the ribbon across the door and cut it, and everybody stayed here. Probably easier.
The gallery was formed from a charity shop that the Arts Centre operated at the unit, and they were unclear at the time on how to best use the space.
Originally, when the board had decided to do this, it was thought that it might be a little big for single exhibitors or single groups, and there was a sort of thought that perhaps they could split the gallery in two, have regular people in the front and people at the back whose pictures or whatever were going to sit there for ages. It didn't work in our minds, and I'm glad it didn't go much further than that, because I think nobody in my years has ever said it's too big.
I think we didn't know what would happen, how it would be appreciated from outside, but more than, I think, yes, it really is. The number of people who say, oh, it's such a wonderful space, I wish we had one like this in our time. And a recent exhibition was put on by somebody I know, whose group meet in the south of Dorset. And they went, oh, no, we don't want to go that far, it's North Dorset. But she persisted, they got in here, and they're all converted. I can't ask for more than that.
Do you miss it?
Yes. Yeah.
What do you miss?
I miss the buzz of it and the people and the artists and to see different things.
Caroline Hughes worked with Kate in managing the gallery.
I think I just moved to Shaftesbury in 2012, and then in 2013 I met Kate's husband, who said that Kate was looking for somebody to help out. And so not long after the gallery opened, I joined. And so it's just been a wonderful thing to do, to be involved in the arts, to work alongside somebody who is so efficient, unbelievably efficient, and just have wonderful artwork all the time. So I do miss it, actually, but I'm quite pleased not to have the work to do.
It's a really specific skill, running a gallery, so had you been in that field before?
No, not at all. I was a teacher of ceramics, so I've always been in the art world, as it were, but nothing to do with gallery running. But I'm quite good on background logistics and being organised, having been teaching. Yeah, so that was a useful skill to bring to it, I think.
I can imagine being organised is vital.
Absolutely, yeah, very organised, yeah. Well, and Kate's very organised too, so together we could really work together very well with everything.
Organisation's important, but a lot of artists are artistic and not necessarily that organised. So I guess there have been some moments because of that.
There's always moments because of that, and you do understand it because we're all different, obviously, and some people find it quite challenging to have to adhere to our rules and our terms and conditions, etc. But we try to be kind about allow things to flow the best they could, and generally everybody has been very pleased with how it's run over the years, and continue to be so with the new team as well.
And clearly it's made a real difference to the finances of the Arts Centre, as was the plan. But I guess in the early days you didn't really know, did you?
But I think almost from day one it's been really good.
Former Arts Centre chairman Jenny Parker was part of the group that decided to convert the charity shop into the gallery in the first place.
We wanted a gallery, we needed a gallery because the gallery was a very little area in the foyer where I'm standing at the moment, but we couldn't afford it. We had bought this shop next door. It was costing a lot of money, and we decided to run it as a charity shop. And in 2 years, we managed to raise 52,000 on it. But by that time, we had enough money to be able to continue to improve the building we bought and to turn this into a gallery. So we didn't intend to run it as a charity shop for long, but we needed the money, and we did that. We knew it was going to be a success. The gallery in the foyer was a success. We just needed a much bigger space.
And it has contributed extremely well to the gallery financially, and with what we're presenting in the broader arts, which of course is extremely important, that we present arts across all the arts for Shaftesbury Arts Centre.
And Arts Centre Deputy Chairman Andy Hargreaves led a special tribute to the outgoing treasurer, Jeff Spencer.
And Jeff, in many ways, has also been instrumental in the success of the gallery as well. Jeff came in 7 years ago now. He'd retired from accountancy. I think you probably thought that this would be a nice little sideline, just a couple of hours a week, sort of pottering around. And in fact, Jeff has been working so hard over that time to really look after us, make sure we're heading in the right direction financially, finding all those little pots of money all over the place that somebody hasn't banked.
When you are asked if you would like to volunteer for somewhere and you're told it's only 1 or 2 meetings a month, you should really think hard.
And with gifts presented, the guests could reflect on what's been achieved over the last decade and look forward to the next 10 years.
Today's Alfred broadcasts are made possible thanks to the support of these Shaftesbury area businesses. Wessex Internet, helping Alfred and thousands of Shaftesbury area residents connect across the countryside.
Boatwrights, our town's local and trusted estate agent.
BV Dairy, proud to support the local community. Learn more online at bvdairy.co.uk.
At Elite Garages Shaftesbury, our services range from MOTs, tyres, servicing and diagnostics, to brakes, clutches, exhausts, cam belts, batteries and more. Call us on 01747 685 455 or visit our website elitegarages.co.uk.
Now a commercial announcement. Here's what's new at Shaftesbury's Morrison's Daily with the manager Sharon Horseman.
Hi, this is Sharon from Morrison's Daily in Shaftesbury. So if I said to you, who is Mr. Beast, would you know who I meant? Well, Jimmy Donaldson, better known as Mr. Beast, is an American YouTuber. The YouTube videos all centre on expensive stunts. I'm pleased to say we're stocking his Feastables chocolate bars. So you can choose from original chocolate, D-Nuts, which is the milk chocolate with peanut butter, Crunch, milk chocolate with puffed rice, or the milk chocolate made with grass-fed milk. Which one will you try first?
Shaftesbury's 10 past forecast.
I'm Ash Jerry with Shaftesbury's weather. This evening of some sunshine to finish the day, which will lead to a dry and clear night. Temperatures getting down to 13 degrees in the early hours. Looking ahead to Friday, it's another dry and sunny day, maybe a touch warmer too.
This is Thursday's Alfred Daily. So when will Shaftesbury Town Council open their new pay and display car park? The one that's been created by knocking down the former disused toilet block between the Royal British Legion Hall, Copper Street and the Tesco car park. Well, I spoke with Town Clerk Bree Logan yesterday. They're just waiting for the people that mark the white lines on the tarmac. They'll mark out the spaces. When that's done, it will open so you will be able to park there. And they're hoping it will be done by Tuesday, the 26th of September, a week on Tuesday, because Angel Lane car park is going to be closed during the day. Dorset Council are going to clear the site of vegetation between 6 and 6, so it would be helpful if the new Copper Street car park is open for business by then. We have some new job vacancies if you're looking for work or know somebody who is, and if they're qualified as a nurse. Dorset Healthcare are recruiting a staff nurse for the Westminster Memorial Hospital, working 30 hours a week across days and nights. You need to apply by the 26th of September. The salary just under 23,000 to just under 28 grand a year, depending of course on experience. The Churchill Retirement Complex at Copper Street, Hardy Lodge, looking for a manager, and they're offering 23.5 grand a year, Monday to Friday, 9 till 5 with an hour for lunch and 24 days of holiday plus bank holidays. Squires Menswear, still looking to recruit part-time sales staff. Apply within. And Paul Regis School are looking for a learning assistant. Every day, Joe Hashman acts as our eyes and ears as he walks around Shaftesbury, looking at nature and daily changes, presenting his Shaston seasonal reflections.
If ever there was an alien, this is it. Primitive eyes on two long, inquiring stalks. A soft, necklace head. Shorter tentacles protrude just above the small mouth. A file-like tongue covered with thousands of tiny teeth. The alien moves on one big, slimy foot, the entire length of its body, which when extended is markedly larger than the pretty globular shell attached to its back, but into which it can comfortably and quickly retract. A glistening grey sausage is defecated as it slow motion glides along a strappy agapanthus leaf. Then it rears up, tentacles waving, until it touches something that demands investigating. In this instance, marjoram stem and leaf. The snail seems lost, but then I notice it has somehow navigated onto softer, more digestible toadflax.
And Thursday Thoughts now from Kathy Morgan.
There's a very heavy dew on the grass this morning, so boots are essential. Got my socks on, I've got my long trousers on, because it's also a fleece kind of morning. If it's anything like yesterday, by about 9 o'clock I'll be regretting all my winter clothes, because the sun is still strong, it's still gorgeous, and it's looking like it's going to be a beautiful day.
Back off, Morgan. Weather forecasting is Ashley's job. But she was right, of course, but we know that with hindsight now, because she sent that through at 6 o'clock this morning.
Alfred, sharing great stories from Ludwell.
Foodies could be heading to Ludwell soon, after the village's butchers, Butlings was named in a prestigious Times newspaper list. In 2021, the family-owned business, now in its fourth generation, won the Champion of Champions award for the best sausage maker in the country. But Paul Butling says he was surprised to be listed as one of Britain's top bakers, achieving position 47 in the Times survey.
You know, we were well pleased with that. It was a guy who comes in the shop, Max Halley. He's a bit of a celebrity when it comes to cooking, and he's got a sandwich shop up in London, and he came in sort of during lockdown, and he noticed one of Mario's pasties there. It all sort of came from that, and he came in and did a piece that we put on YouTube.
When I took a bite of your pasty, I was straight away, I was just like, that is the best pasty I've ever had.
And that's where the recommendation came from.
It's quite a departure, isn't it? You wouldn't expect you, even though your pasties are really good, to be classed as a baker, or certainly not make the top 50 in the country, according to the Times.
Well, no, that was an accolade.
The paper pointed out it wasn't a regular bread shop.
In the Times, I think it did like a sort of butcher in brackets, but I suppose we come under the remit of a baker. He did put that comment there to say that he felt it was better than anything he had tasted in Cornwall. So, yeah, it was. It was a feather in our cap.
That's fighting talk, isn't it? You'll have people coming up from Cornwall with pitchforks.
Well, yeah, you've got to be a little bit careful, as you can't call it a Cornish pasty. I think we had it down as a Wiltshire pasty. But, that is certainly an accolade. I'm sure there's plenty of good pasty makers down in that neck of the woods. But it's bound to be. But we were well chuffed.
And you don't change the recipe just because it's a Wiltshire pasty. It's not constructed in a different way at all. You don't crimp it differently or anything.
No, just do it the same.
So you're going to start a new line of bread products now? You're going to do sourdough and perhaps lardy cake or buns?
Well, I think there's a limit to how far we can go on this one, because obviously we're limited on space. But anything that's with pastry, with pies, we're certainly up for it. That's for sure.
And the important thing, has it made any difference to your bottom line? Have you had people coming in to inquire, people you've never seen before?
Well, we have had people coming in, but obviously it's sort of trying to keep up with the demand of the things. This is the problem. You can imagine anything that's a handmade product. It's it's a little bit time consuming, and it's a job to keep up with it. But we've seen faces that we haven't seen before. Obviously, they read about it in the Times, and came down to see if there was anything available.
Congratulations! We look forward to you being Ironmonger of the Year or Hairdresser of the Year next year.
I can't see myself becoming a hairdresser, but we'll try and work on the Ironmonger anyway.
Paul Butling of Butlings in Ludwell. Before the end of today's Alfred Daily, there was a COP climate change discussion with 250 people going to Dorchester last week. And from our area, Rachel Boldell of Planet Shaftesbury and Sustainable Shaftesbury's Richard Thomas. What do we need to know? What are the takeaway messages? You'll find out within the hour. And also, could you cope as a mental health first aider? What would you have to do? Why should we have people taking on those roles? Laura Wilde's starting a course at the Grosvenor next month. She'll tell you all about it.
Alfred, 107.3 FM.
It's probably fair to say that most Shaftesbury area residents don't enjoy the days getting shorter and the nights drawing in, apart from members of the Cranbourne Chase Astronomy Group. Tony Dees says the club hosts expert speakers and members go stargazing and look forward to when it's easier to see the night skies.
Yes, astronomers tend to favour the winter. That's true.
They've tried to hold sessions during the summer, though.
Did have a meeting up on Wind Green in August to try and see the Perseid meteor shower, which was all very jolly and fun, but we didn't see many meteors because it was a cloudy night.
After the summer break, the club's winter programme begins on Wednesday, the 20th of September at the New Remembrance Hall in Charlton. Their guest speaker is astronomer and consultant to the Cranbourne Chase Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty, Steve Tonkin. He'll talk about the importance of dark night skies. But I asked Tony whether this was preaching to the converted.
Well, I think what's interesting about Steve's view on all this is that it's not only about astronomy, it's almost actually a sort of climate change talk, because he talks about the way in which light affects biodiversity and affects plants and all that sort of thing. Things like birds cheeping in the middle of the night because they think it's the daytime. So it's a wider view, if you like, of light pollution than just the astronomical side, which I thought would be of interest to members.
So have you big things in the pipeline for this new programme this year ahead?
October, we hope to have an observation evening. We always have to have an alternative up our sleeves. So if we can't observe on that night, we'll have members giving short talks, 15 minutes or so, of their own experiences. Then in November, we've got a talk about observing the planets by Mark Radice, who's quite a well-known astronomer. He's done a lot on YouTube with telescopes and so on. That'll be in November. Then in December, we're going to have a social evening, and we'll have our AGM as part of that. In January, we have a talk from a member of the Fording Bridge Astronomical Society, Mark Hardacre. He's published quite a bit as well in astronomy. I thought we'd start off the year with something fairly relaxed, and he's going to talk about how he became interested in astronomy and the places he's visited. He wrote a very interesting article recently, which is really what put me on to him, about observing craters in the desert and comparing craters on Earth with craters on the Moon and elsewhere in the solar system. Then in February we'll have another observation evening. Then in March, something about telescopes probably. And then in April, we've got a talk on asteroids.
So in terms of members, are you where you want to be? Membership numbers?
Well, let's see what happens on next Wednesday. I mean, it's the sort of start of a new term. We want to see how many come back, as it were. One of the things that we are trying to do, I've given you the program as it stands, but Steve organises observation evenings himself. He has a group who they move around to the Deverells and other places on certain dates. And what we're going to try and do after Steve's talk and with Steve is see if we can't increase our number of observation possibilities by joining in with some of his groups. Because I think there is a feeling that there's been a lot of sit and listen, but not a great deal of getting out there and observing. And of course, that's key to astronomy. So we'll probably try and enhance our observational sessions through this year, perhaps latching onto some of Steve's program, and also organising things as we did with the Perseids in August, by having a sort of WhatsApp communication group that one day you might say, or one afternoon you might say, look, it's going to be fine this evening, let's go out and look, there's Jupiter and Saturn in the sky, we might get a good view with them, bring your telescopes.
Soon the club will celebrate its first birthday.
We started in December last year, so yes, the AGM in December this year represents the end of the first year, really.
So has the group evolved in the way that you'd hoped?
No, it has evolved well, and I think there's a good balance between people who are pretty knowledgeable about the subject and those who are anxious to learn. As I say, I think that knowledge needs to be conveyed more to those who don't know so much through observation sessions. And we've got 3 or 4 people in the committee and in the group who are very good at observation. You know, they can pick up a star just like that and find it and talk about it. We've got one chap in the group who actually makes his own telescopes. So, yeah, there's a huge range, but I think there's enough on each side of people who know and people who want to know more.
And if you want to know more, turn up next Wednesday.
At the Charlton New Remembrance Hall at 7:15.
Alfred, 107.3 FM.
Every Thursday on Alfred, we join friends and cousins Jackie Spiteri and Jeanette Hardiman, who reminisce about growing up in Compton and Fontmell in the 1960s and 1970s.
Do you know, Jeanette, I went to post a birthday card to my niece yesterday. I had a £1 coin with me, thinking that was going to be enough. I could not believe the price.
Really?
Can you remember what the price of a stamp was in the early 60s?
I think, Jackie, in the early 60s it was only about 3 old pence.
Probably only went up a few pennies, throughout the 60s when we were growing up, didn't it?
Yeah, but I suppose, Jackie, lots of it's very relative, really. I mean, our parents didn't have much money when we were growing up in the early 60s, did they?
No, they didn't, although I don't ever remember feeling poor. It was just the way it was. And they wouldn't have dreamt of buying anything they couldn't buy outright, would they?
No credit cards or loans in those days, Jackie. Very much frowned upon. I mean, people tended to get paid weekly, didn't they, in cash? They'd be given one of those little brown envelopes.
Cash or cheques? I don't remember anything other than that.
And do you know, I believe that the average weekly wage in the early 60s was something like £10.
Wow.
But with inflation, I think that would be about £150 today.
Well, that's not enough, is it, really?
No.
To feed a family.
Of course, it was perfectly normal as well for a husband to hand over the weekly pay packet to the wife.
Yeah, if she managed the money and bought the food.
Yeah.
You know, and it was all strictly budgeted for, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, certainly in our house it was. It was like that, wasn't it? What about in yours?
Oh, yeah, it was, definitely.
And, you know, looking back, I mean, they must have stretched that money so much.
Yeah, not a penny was wasted.
Yeah.
No.
What about houses then, Jackie? Because in the late 60s, you know, you could buy a house apparently for about £4,000.
Well, even with inflation, they were still much cheaper then. And banks and building societies lent smaller loans, didn't they?
Yeah. Do you know what? I remember this from working for Midland Bank in the 70s. They would only consider a husband's income, not his wife's.
No, that sounds about right.
Yeah. I know my parents couldn't afford to buy a house when they were first married. Mum lived in an annex in Gold Hill Cottage in Shaftesbury with my older brother because my nan and granddad lived in Gold Hill Cottage for a while.
Yeah.
My dad was away in the Navy.
Yeah.
And then later, Mum and Dad moved into a council house in Fontmell Magna until they could afford to buy a house.
Well, we lived in Compton Abbas in a farm cottage. I don't remember it Capstitch. It was a small, brick and flint cottage just under the hill there.
Oh, yes.
And it belonged to Mr. Harding. We always called him the boss.
Oh, the Lord of the Manor.
Lord of the Manor.
Yeah. The boss. Forget about Bruce Springsteen. Yeah, it was Mr. Harding.
And there were lots of houses in the village that belonged to him. And because it was a time when lots of people worked on the farm.
Yeah.
But my mum worked in the farmhouse. And we lived there until my dad, who was a builder, he bought a small piece of land for Mr. Harding for just a few £100, it must have been. And he built his own house in the late 60s. And I do remember what it cost him, £2,000 to build.
What an achievement, yeah.
I know.
What about household goods then, Jackie?
Well, I mean, things like TVs were expensive, weren't they?
They were, yeah. Most people rented, didn't they?
We rented ours from, I think it was Radio Rentals in Shaftesbury High Street. Later Granada, wasn't it?
Oh, yes. People would stand outside, wouldn't they, watching the TV?
But when you think of the cost, and also they were always breaking down, in the 60s, a black and white TV cost about £80.
Oh, that's a lot of money then.
It was about, in today's terms, about £1,000.
Yeah.
And a colour set was even more expensive.
Yeah.
It could cost up to £300.
Yeah. I mean, everyone rented, didn't they?
They seemed to.
Yes, yeah. And what about cars, Jackie? I mean, my first memory is of us having a motorbike and sidecar in the 60s.
Yeah, my mum and dad did too. But my first memory of a car is a black Austin, little one, with the yellow indicators that came out, like little flags.
Oh, that's it, each side, yeah. Oh, but can you also remember then, if you were wanting somebody to overtake or something, you'd have to put your hand out, wouldn't you, and sort of beckon them on
I'd forgotten
out
that.
of the window, yes.
And they were always seemed to be slow, those yellow indicators, to come up and down.
Yeah. I know we had an old black Austin car at some point, and Dad had a starter handle. He'd go out, you kind of put it in the front under the bonnet and wound it round and round to get the engine going.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, when my dad got his light blue Hillman Husky, we thought, it's top of the range.
Yes.
But it was sort of like a small van.
Yeah.
And then he had a little Morris post office van. First brand new car, which was bought outright, obviously, was an Austin Allegro, sort of tomato red colour, in the 1970s. I'll never forget that brand new car smell.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
But it was the norm, wasn't it, back then, to have just one family car? Unlike today, when everyone in the household has their own car.
Yeah, well, it was probably because the woman didn't have to go to work, or if she did, she might get on a push bike, like my mum did when she worked in the village, or she got on the bus.
Yes.
Because we had a proper bus service.
Yes.
And I always remember her carrying the heavy shopping bags back from the bus stop.
I mean, the cheapest car for sale in the UK, I think, in the 60s, was, believe it or not, the Fiat 500.
Well, you've got today.
Yes. Now, do you know you could buy one back then for £470?
Wow.
Most cars, I think, cost between £500, that was for a Mini or a Ford Anglia, to around £1,000 for Fords, Vauxhalls and Austins.
So they were cheaper, weren't they?
Yeah.
They were cheaper.
And in the early 60s as well, a gallon of petrol, of course we work in litres now, cost about 5 shillings.
But there were no self-service petrol stations, were there?
Oh, no.
Growing up.
No, you'd always be served by a petrol pump attendant. Yeah. And I remember particularly the Crown Garage at Fontwell, opposite the pub. It was very popular.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's on that main road, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, Dad always used to go to Cookman and Hawkins at Ewan-Minster. Don't know why. I guess because they did repairs as well.
Yes.
But I loved to go with him because often there was a freebie to collect when you bought petrol. Something like a tiger tail.
Oh, yes, or a World Cup coin.
World Cup coin.
Yes, I remember those, yeah. Not many people could afford a telephone, could they, in the 60s?
No, not many homes.
No, I think my mum and dad didn't have a phone till the 70s.
No, I don't think we did. And the first one was the old round dial type.
I know our neighbours had a big black Bakelite phone in their lounge, and their phone number was in the 400s, very, very low.
Yeah, but we were very careful about when we made a call, weren't we?
Oh, yes. I mean, some people used an egg timer to make sure they didn't stay on the phone too long.
I can remember you waited till 6 o'clock.
Yes.
And Sundays when it was cheaper, didn't you?
That's it, yeah. Most of the village in Fontwell, though, and I would suspect in Compton as well, they would use the one and only phone box.
It was well used.
Yeah, it cost
Very
4
well
old
used.
pence,
Yeah.
didn't it, Jackie, to make a
Yeah.
call.
Press button B, yeah.
And there'd be queues of people outside there,
There
wouldn't there,
would.
waiting
And
to
Mrs.
use it.
Horlock in Compton, she would clean the phone box.
Oh, really?
At Twin Town, it was always spotless.
Oh.
Had its directories in, everything.
And then, of course, there was the pub, the village pub. People bought most of their alcohol from there, didn't they?
Well, you couldn't buy it in the supermarket, could you?
No.
But people didn't generally drink it home, did they?
No.
Except perhaps at Christmas.
Yeah. But, going to the pub was a real social event, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Certainly in Fontwell. The Crown was buzzing on a Friday or Saturday night. But I know beer was the main drink for men. Certainly.
What did it cost, I wonder, back then?
Well, I think in the early 60s, about 2 shillings.
But it was all from bottles, wasn't it? No cans.
Yeah, and lager didn't really become popular until the 70s.
No.
I know I used to help wash up behind the bar at the Crown when my auntie and uncle had it. And things like Bitter Top, that's, beer with a splash of lemonade, they were popular.
Yeah.
And brands like Whitbread Tankard, Watney's Red Barrel, they were popular.
Yeah, and they were all served in the old-style beer mugs, weren't they?
Yes.
You know those...
Yes.
Do you know the ones?
All like the
handle?
tankards.
The tankards.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, there was no self-service in shops.
No.
Everyone would queue at the counter. And in Fontwell shop, I don't know about Compton shop, you'd buy your groceries one side of the shop, and then if you wanted a stamp or something, you'd have to step into the post office side of the building.
Yeah, I think it was similar in Compton Abbas.
Yeah. But anyway, talking of post offices then, Jackie, did you manage to post your birthday card?
Well, I did, Jeanette, but I had to pay £1.10 for the privilege.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
That's amazing. When you think about that's a tenth of the weekly wage of £10 in the early 60s.
It's daylight robbery, Jeanette.
It really is.
From little down to great ground, this is Alfred.
On the 9th of September, around 250 people attended the Dorset COP, or Conference of the Parties event in Dorchester, to discuss what can be done locally, nationally and globally to tackle the climate emergency. The event was arranged by Zero Carbon Dorset, Sustainable Dorset and the Dorset Climate Action Network. Amongst the Shaftesbury attendees were Planet Shaftesbury regulars Richard Thomas and Rachel Bodell. I asked both of them what were the key messages our community members who didn't attend should know about, and why was it important?
First of all, that it happened, and that it happened in Dorset, and that such a large proportion of the powerful speakers also came from Dorset, and that the organisations that were represented there were all local organisations with passionate people. We made Chris Packham jealous. He recorded himself giving us a message, which was played at the beginning of the opening for the COP. He said at the end of it he was going to go and have words with somebody else in Hants. They needed one too. And to start off with, I suppose I wasn't really sure how this was going to be at the local area level. But it seemed by the end of the day that we had a role to play, that it had served a purpose, that people had moved on by being there, whether they'd had some of their ideas confirmed, or they'd learnt new things, or they'd met new people. I thought it was a brilliant thing.
Rachel was impressed by the words on the banner hanging over the entrance.
What we want is a Dorset that's zero carbon, bright blue, wild green, community-centred, sparkling clean, and locally fed. And even just going through that now, it moves me. I really like it. And that's what you want of a vision. The fact that it has colour in it, that it is relatively simple, that it covers the whole piece, yeah, it's great.
Sustainable Shaftesbury Group member Richard Thomas also attended. He felt it could have been a bit better.
Wasn't quite punchy enough for me.
More on that in a moment, but first Richard's 3 most memorable moments and messages.
But my main takeaways from it would be the global situation is very serious, that there are solutions, but we're nowhere near achieving them. And that's because we haven't really dealt with corporate greed, we haven't really dealt with political inertia, and until those things are tackled head-on, which people are trying to do but are not making much progress, it's a bit hard to motivate local people on the think global, act local philosophy to feel that what they can do locally will make a difference, but it has to be attempted.
Richard says there were 3 important themes that came out of the Dorset COP sessions.
Restore nature, and therefore the biodiversity that goes with that, whether it's your own back garden or in the wider local area. Consume less, recycle more, use less energy, and conserve more. Is very much tied in with growing local food, for example. That's something that we not only should do, but may well have to do if we want to survive.
Now, when you say it wasn't as punchy as you'd have liked, how would you have changed that aspect of it?
For example, I'll give you 2 good examples. One is, at quite an early point in the conference, a Bournemouth MP, a Tory MP, was introduced. He hadn't been asked to speak, he was invited to attend, and he made that very clear. That was Tobias Ellwood, who has been a government minister but is not in the government at the moment. He was very quickly heckled by the audience along the lines of, why is this government, why are you allowing more exploration in the North Sea for fossil fuels, etc. And he made it clear that he wasn't in favour of that, and that's presumably why he was at the conference. But he also said, which was true, where were the other MPs for Dorset? Where were Dorset Council cabinet members. They weren't there. There were 2 officers from Dorset Council, which was good, and they ran sessions. But local politicians at a senior level were not there. That, to me, stood out. I suppose it is worrying that there's a little bit of tendency, and it's understandable because human nature, for people who are active in this field to feel that they've got to huddle together and be nice to each other, and that will help. I'm afraid I'm not of that view. I think it is unlikely that voluntary action is going to make the difference, the radical difference, the massive difference that's going to be necessary. We need, I'm afraid to say, a change in our entire lifestyles, almost going back to pre-Second World War era in terms of how the land is used, allowing nature to recover, reforming the way we farm. 1 or 2 farmers have cotton and are doing it, but not enough. It's that sort of high-level activity which makes me think, and Tobias Elwood, when I grabbed him for a brief word, did agree with me that I almost feel we're going to have to go on to a wartime footing to avoid what is rapidly going to become catastrophic. There was a speaker from Burton Bradstock, who is actually a leading member of the Grantham Institute, come up with a lot of very hard factual information about climate change. And he said, which I gather is now accepted, that we will not make the 1.5 degree target. It ain't going to happen. The best estimate at the moment is it's going to be like 2.4% and 2.4 degrees and rising. That is catastrophic. Chris Packham, in his video intro to the conference, made the point that let's try and put aside our little differences about how to tackle things and work towards change, radical change, but he emphasised that we have to act, and that I didn't think was taken on fully enough by the conference. They failed, for example, at the end of the conference to make a promised declaration as to what their intent was. That's because several people at the conference, and most of them were from the Extinction Rebellion camp, from Bridport in particular, who were very against the draft declaration because it was seen to be a little bit fluffy, not hard-hitting enough. And I would agree with that. As I've said before, professional politicians and the people who get paid to be politicians always have half an eye on where the votes are coming from. And therefore, there's always a tendency to sit on the fence or to play both sides depending on who they're talking to. And that's why politics is such a dangerous game. And people, even at a county level, do play politics, and that's probably why they didn't come to the conference, because a lot of the people involved were either in the Green Party or the Liberal Democrats were very much in evidence, as they are in the climate change movement in Dorset, most of which is centred along the south coast. And I think it's unfortunate that, if you like, that Rachel and I were one of the few people to come from the north of the Blandford area. It's almost as if we're not actually represented enough up in this part of the world.
The original idea was to have something like this, but in Sturminster Newton, and that didn't end up being possible. But I think that illustrates that the purpose was not to make it southerly focused.
I asked both attendees whether they believed there were 3 key things that Shaftesbury area residents needed to know about.
What we can do here in our community, what we can do at home is important. If people have the opportunity to join in with and support things that are happening locally, get stuck in. If we had a community energy initiative, welcome it, join in if you can, support our local businesses. That building our community is actually good for us and good for the planet. The Dorset Green Living Project was mentioned. It's existed for a while. It used to be a folder of guidance that you could use at home to indicate some of the small changes you might make that would make a big difference. And in the original form, it was something that you might share with your neighbours and compare notes on how you were getting on. Now, of course, when we communicate more online, it's the sort of thing you could do with your family, you could do with people who are available at the time of day that you're available to talk to them. If you've got any money in any institution anywhere, consider what they are doing with it. make sure you're not funding the world that we have to move away from. And just Googling Green Money Guide is a good thing to do. And be kind to one another. There are so many different ways of moving in what is actually the right direction. We had a session that was looking at the energy situation. We talked about powering up and powering down. We looked at a map of the county, and the point was made that Dorset is actually very well placed to get maximum sunshine compared with the rest of the country. There's no reason why we wouldn't do really well with solar power. Of course, people get uneasy about solar farms. We don't want loads and loads of solar farms over our countryside. There are some planning authorities who, even though the national government hasn't mandated solar panels on new development, there are some planning authorities that mandate it in their territory. Why on earth in Dorset do we not require developers to put solar panels on house roofs? It is absolutely ridiculous that that doesn't happen, and I can't understand that there's any political motivation behind it. It's inertia. It's ridiculous.
And as Rachel says, there's no reason whatsoever why the planning system couldn't be relaxed here, so that having solar panels or photovoltaic tiles on roofs could become commonplace, and indeed it would have to be. Dorset is quite backward in many ways. Its planning system is not good, and that needs to be improved.
Politics is life, it influences everything, and with that in mind, there's always a danger that one is in a bit of an echo chamber. You talk to people who are like-minded. There is, I don't know how big this proportion of people is, but there is a body of people who are not on side with the idea of there being a climate emergency, as we've seen from 10 council meetings. Have you any sense about how sizable that body is? And do you think the politicians who've kept away from events that we've discussed are doing it because they're not sure and they want to get re-elected?
Yeah, this whole business of conspiracy theory is becoming almost an industry. Getting the truth of the situation is very difficult, and you've got to be quite selective in where you get your information and try and use reliable sources, which is easier said than done. I was introduced only yesterday to a new website that I'd never heard of, which purports to be an independent, impartial source of information that will tell you things that the politicians are hiding from you, that the corporations are hiding from you, that the press are hiding from you, and it's very easy to get completely depressed and destroyed by that. And I can well understand a lot of people wanting to shove their heads in the sand like an ostrich and say, oh no, for God's sake, please take this away because I can't deal with it, and I'd rather eat, drink and be merry because tomorrow I may die approach.
There's a bit more of that with some people, isn't it, who actively oppose it rather than stick their head in the sand. They'll wave a placard against it.
Yes, because they've been convinced, and I don't doubt their intelligence, but they've been convinced that the establishment is lying to them, that the media is lying to them, that even the town council is lying to them. The trouble is, it isn't always clear that they themselves have got accurate information, and you can sense the anger and the frustration in people. This is the big problem with democracy as a whole in the Western world at the moment. There's an increasing distrust in the democratic process, and that is potentially tragic, actually.
To get things done, it's always helpful if you have the vast majority of people on side. Do you sense that the vast majority of people in this town, just on a local level, are on side with broadly the aims of trying to tackle a climate emergency?
One of the statistics at Dorset COP, funnily enough, was that 80% of people actually believe in climate change and want something to happen. But that doesn't seem to be translating into action, and therein is the problem. Is it because people know there's a problem but really don't want to change their lifestyles because they like going on a holiday to Spain and they like having expensive meals and driving around in their cars and flying around? And when you're actually asking them, you've got to adopt this, eat less meat, you've got to eat more vegetables because that's the only way to save the planet. That's something that a lot of people, maybe the majority, that 80% who know there's a problem, won't accept it because it's just too hard to take.
Richard Thomas, and before him Rachel Bodle. If there are questions that you'd like to have answered about the COP session, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer. The next Planet Shaftesbury event is at the Town Hall on Thursday the 21st of September, and it starts at 7:30pm.
Want to listen to a story again? You can on the Alfred website. thisisalfred.com.
Many workers have been sent on first aid courses. Well, now on the 14th and 15th of October, Shaftesbury wellness expert Laura Wilde is hosting a 2-day event at the Grosvenor, offering first aid for mental health skills, with nutritionist Rosie Watson. Rosie will explain how the right food can also boost well-being. It's a popular area for teaching currently, with several providers offering the service, because whilst there are legal requirements to have a qualified first aider on site, training workers and supporting colleagues with mental health challenges isn't mandatory, although Laura says it should be.
Which is one of the reasons for doing this course, is try and raise the awareness of that, because there's, with stresses and strains, not just in businesses these days, but also in everyday life. People, even though they may not want to, they'll end up taking personal life to work, and it's just nice to have somebody there at work they can go to, and it may be that they need just to ease their workload a little bit. It may be that they need to just talk to someone. It may be that they're actually in crisis, and that's their last and only port of call.
We know what a physical first aider will do in the workplace. If you get cut, you have an accident, you have a fall, you're unconscious, they step in. What does somebody who's a mental health first aider do? It
would all depend on what somebody's come to you with. So say, for example, someone comes to you in crisis, in the very extreme, and you get, hi, I'm going to kill myself. What do you do in that point? And this course is designed to tell you how you deal with it, who you can direct them to, whether you need to personally go with them, personally work with them, or whether it is just something you can refer them onto. It could be that you refer them to the GP and you work with them through it. It's almost a safeguarding issue, isn't it? So you want to make sure that their well-being is at really the top of the priority list here.
And with it being a safeguarding issue, as you say, in some contexts, then is there a recommended number of people, a proportion of people who are employed in the company that should have this accreditation, if you like?
I would love to see at least one level 3 and one level 2 mental health first aider in all workplaces. The difference in the qualifications is quite literally the content of the course. So level 3 obviously goes into more detail, and it's a 2-day course. By just having the level 1, which is the one that we'll be delivering in October, you are that first point of contact, and you are the person that can direct them off to where they need to be. And that's really important.
Mental health isn't the same as physical, if you like, health. If you have a nasty cut, somebody can patch you up. That's one physical action. This is much more complex, and some people might feel quite uncomfortable about talking about very personal, intimate things that they wouldn't talk with most people about with a work colleague that they might see every day. Do you think that's a challenge to overcome?
Yes, it definitely is. And it's always nice to walk into a workplace and have more of a family vibe. Everyone gets on, and you can go to your peers, but it doesn't have to be a manager that's trained. It can be just someone on the shop floor, so to speak. Anyone that has the staff confidence, I would say, would be absolutely perfect for that role, because it's normally the person that talks to everyone.
You've got to think as an employer about the person that has the strongest people skills, perhaps the most gregarious, most chatty, most comfortable in being a people person.
Yeah, absolutely. They would make the best person to talk to. And if you talk to them every day, it wouldn't be that hard a leap just to go to them about something a little bit more personal.
There are lots of social responsibility reasons for wanting to do this. There are some business people who are perhaps a lot more hard-nosed and just concerned about the bottom line. So what can you say to people that are only looking at numbers and think this would be a cost, time out the workplace potentially? What would you say to convince them there is a benefit to the bottom line in investing in one of these sessions?
It's something like 80.3 million days were lost during 21-22 due to sickness. And that sickness, out of that, something like 51% was, say, stress, depression, anxiety. So if that can be helped at a work level, you're looking at a happier workforce, and a happier workforce don't take sick days. So unless you've got something physical that's holding you off work, there should be no reason for mental health to keep you off work. So really, from a business point of view, it's well worth investing in your employees' mental health.
On the second day of the two-day course, on the 15th of October, Rosie will focus on nutrition, which is an important part of mental well-being.
I think people have a tendency to separate the brain and the body into two different parts of you, but actually every body system works together. And we can all acknowledge that the food you put in your body and your lifestyle, your exercise and sleep all has an impact on your physical health, but we seem to forget that impacts your mental health too. Your brain it takes up about 30% of the energy that you eat just to run your brain. And obviously there are nutrients that your brain requires in order to function properly. So if you're not nourishing your brain and body with the right foods, then that's going to have an impact on your brain function. If you think about the way your body works in terms of like neurotransmitters, they all require correct nutrition to function at their best. You might find that your feel-good neurotransmitters are not working efficiently if you're not nourishing your brain properly. So it all works into one. So you want to make sure that you're getting the correct nutrition to feel good mentally and physically.
Are there any quick fixes, any foods which are really good that do promote mental health and well-being in some way?
I wouldn't say there are any quick fixes. The same with if you're facing a physical health challenge, it takes time to overcome that. But you certainly want to consistently eat foods that do promote brain health. So that could be things like omega-3, your B vitamins, which support nervous system health. Iron obviously you want that iron in the blood to make sure that you've got enough energy. So yeah, you certainly want to be consistently, where possible, just getting those nutrients in, and over time you can see a benefit. And then obviously on the flip side, you've got like your highly processed foods, which will promote inflammation in the body. If you've got any intolerances, then regularly consuming those foods are going to exacerbate any existing health problems you've got. So it's really a long-term method rather than a quick fix with regards to nutrition. And it obviously shouldn't replace things like talking therapies or seeing your doctor, potentially medication. It should never be done in replacement for medical help, but it can certainly support that process.
Now, it's interesting you did mention omega-3, and a lot of that, of course, is found in fatty fish. And I've heard it said so many times since childhood, actually, that fish is brain food that's meant to be good for brain health. Is there anything in that, or is it just an old wives' tale, an urban myth?
No, it's true. So omega-3 contains a substance called DHA, which was actually a huge part of our evolution in terms of becoming the humans we are today. And it's a vital fuel for the brain. Our hunter-gatherer ancestors would have got that from eating actual brains along with bone marrow, which is really high in DHA. And it supports the development of the brain, like you say, from childhood into adulthood.
This isn't something that's, as you've said, is a quick fix. This is a lifestyle change.
But I want them to have an awareness of how nutrition does impact their health. And my viewpoint of this is obviously Laura's going to provide the qualification for people to help others. I want to educate people so that they can help themselves. We can all be there for other people, but it's just as important that we are there for ourselves too. So nourishing your body and your brain so that you can function at your best will enable you to obviously live your best life, but also have the energy and brain power to be there for other people. So it's making it a more holistic approach.
And Laura, is there a physical bit of paper you get from this, some form of recognised accreditation?
By FAA, the First Aid Awards, which are held in very high regard. If you've done the level 2, I'd recommend going to level 3 at some point, because it gives you a much deeper degree of knowledge over different conditions and how to help different conditions. And really, most importantly, how to recognize them, because it could be that you're the one that recognizes what's going on when other people may just be turning away from that person because they might seem difficult, or they might seem secluded, or just unwilling to be around people. You're the one that could actually reach out and help someone.
Laura's event on the 14th and 15th of October here in Shaftesbury at the Grosvenor Arms Hotel. You can learn more about the concept at wild-training.com. That's Laura's website. And that's Thursday's Alfred Daily. I'll catch you tomorrow. Stay safe, Shaftesbury.